Welcome to the Confessions Podcast, episode 27. And I'd just like to start with a quote that encapsulates last week in the last few shows we've done. You are not special. You are not a beautiful and unique snowflake. We're all singing, all dancing, crap of the world. Hugh, would you agree?
I think it merits reflection.
That is from Fight Club. And I just wanted to add that this is the Confessions Podcast. And there's two rules of the Confessions Podcast. Number one rule is you talk about the Confessions Podcast. And number two is you talk about the Confessions Podcast. But that quote, I thought, summed up well kind of what we were talking about the last few weeks, that we're all in this together. Emissions, carbon, pollution, all this stuff, we've got to look at it as a global issue. And you were talking about we can't keep all these people in serfdom. We're all part of the same compost heap, so to speak, as that quote alludes to.
Indeed. Well, hey, listen, anything that allows us to discuss the majestic Fight Club is okay with me. And actually, this is just random that you mentioned that, and I'm randomly coming back at you, but I could kick myself because I didn't know the source material for the Fight Club. Do you know the source material for the Fight Club, Chris?
Well, it was a book, no? Being into a movie, is that what we're talking, or is there something before that, you mean?
So there was a movie with the wonderful Brad Pitt. It was a book,
yeah,
right? And by
Palachnik, is it called Palachnik?
He's a kind of Matrix kind of guy, you red pills and all that, red and blue pills. But the bit before, do you know that?
I do not know. Educate me, brother. Educate me.
So it's not an original. It is and it isn't. It's not an original piece of fiction. It is based on real life events.
Okay. Are you talking about the UNIBomber, Ted Kaczynski?
It's the story of it is all lifted because he did a manuscript, and one of his things was you got to publish this.
Right. Okay.
And that is the source material for the Fight Club.
Very interesting. I did not know that. And as you can see, people, we do some preparation, but we tried to keep some of it spontaneous. So Hugh had no clue that I was going to be talking about that. So anyway, all good. Now, it's been the week of the Super Bowl, Hugh. The Super Bowl is seen as like the cliche, the hottest ticket in the world. No one can get a ticket at the Super Bowl. As a hedge fund manager, could you have got tickets for you and I to go to the Super Bowl?
Well,
that's a yes. That's a yes, isn't it?
So first of all, would I want to ask or to go to such an event?
With me?
No.
What about with me? I'll be there.
With you, yeah. But, okay, so if I was responsible for managing somewhere between 5 and 10 yards of assets, it would be no problem, And so, the Super Bowl, you have this rotating camera and it's full of Hollywood and music, the greatest stars. What they don't show you is, the middle-aged hedge fund guys are sitting right beside them, and they've got their telephone on a holster on a belt, and they've got their shirt tucked in, and they've got their hair's nice and combed, and maybe they're going, and they're carrying a little bit too much weight, but hey, they're at it,
Fair play. Well, we've got a few things to talk about this week because we were looking at Hugh's monthlies, because that's the whole point of this podcast. It's called Confessions. We go back and look at Hugh's monthlies when he had his Eclectica podcast, which he would obviously write to his clients. And we've seen a lot of foreshadowing. We have seen, the man that can see around corners, the man that can see around many corners. 2006, I don't know what, Hugh, you were smoking, drinking, eating, but, you could see the future clearly. But before we get into that, very briefly, the new James Bond movie, you have the James Bond car. You are driving James Bond's car. And he drives it in the Caribbean at the start of the movie, and you're in the Caribbean. And it's pretty much the identical car, correct?
Yeah. A Defender. And a Defender I don't know if it's a 90 or a 110. I've got both.
You've got two defenders.
Got two
defenders in the St Barts. You've got two of the same car.
Well, yeah.
This is the hedge fund. This is what I need to be into. You've got two of the same car.
I mean, I want to say it's perhaps one of the highest concentrations of defenders per head of population anywhere in the world.
Oh, it's popular. It's popular, right? Okay.
I mean, hey, you're either in the team St Barts or you're not. If you're in the team, you drive a mini moke or a defender, and if you're VIP, a dishevelled, albeit my dishevelled is presently rotting and composting in my tropical garden. It needs repair. But people, I have no cash, and it has to await me receiving some cash. But anyway, this was my James Bond. You know, he's my age, and like the Swan Song, he's in the Caribbean. He's driving my car, and actually the Fleming house and a lot of the architectural flourishes are quite common in the touches that we use in the Blanc Bleu master plan. James Bond is never going to be the same. You know, like you spend your life being younger, and James Bond is almost like your father, or an uncle as you get a little bit older, and then suddenly he's you, and now he's going to be this kind of person younger than me, and so that whole that life chapter is closing.
And he's also Scottish, which is another thing that we share.
Oh,
the character's Scottish, I'm saying.
I thought you meant Daniel Craig.
No, he's not Scottish. No, James Bond's Scottish. No Daniel Craig.
But on Daniel Craig, I mean, this is a preposterous story, and we should really move on. But I recall, so when my hair was shorter, and you've seen me on these Newsnight interviews on British television, but when my hair was shorter, apparently I looked like Daniel Craig. Apparently,
I can see that. I can see that. I can see that a bit. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And I was walking down my street, which itself had its fair share of celebs who lived on the roll, you know, the prosperity roll, and these two, I think they were Japanese, and they stopped me and they're like, "Wow, we took a photograph," and I'm like, what? You are James Bond. I'm like, you know, do I go with this? You know, boom, 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 or I'm not. And it is a preposterous story. But I then met randomly again at a party, a kind of, you know, a funky kind of around a fire pit in Dea in Mallorca, which was one of my favorite go-to places. And I met this journalist, and she was Wall Street Journal European cultural attaché or something of that. And she's like, "Hey, Daniel, how are you? When did we last see you? Was that party in New York?" I'm like,
you are living the dream, Hugh. Living the dream, and you are the biggest St Barts, like geographically. Like how
21 kilometers.
Oh, I love that. What a legend.
But actually, stay tuned, because life is always offering amazing adventures, and with a buddy, we have of trying to organize a weekend of rally. What do I want to call it? A tour, a defender tour, where we would invite, you know, rich folk with their pumped up defenders to bring them on the island, and we'll have a weekend where we have a big party,
right?
And we'll get permission to close the roads down. We'll do time trials across various routes, and try and raise charity, because what we need is an intensive care unit for the local hospital. We're suffering horribly. The number of fatalities we're racking up with kids on mopeds.
Right.
And they have to get airbagged out, and just the immediacy of reaction. I mean, just an investment in having medical first responders on a motorcycle versus a car, and then getting them to a hospital as opposed to on a helicopter to another island, the chances of surviving just increase dramatically. So
no, I hope that works out. I think we can all echo that's not something we want to see happen. So yeah, best of luck with that, Hugh. Best of luck.
I'm gazing at my Twitter. I put out a challenge to the community. I was trying to replicate what I did in my hedge fund world, which is, I would sit alone and conceive of conjecture, and when it when I felt it was coming together and I was getting clarity, those moments where I could dare to guess of seeing the future, I would then with great excitement share it with my intel team of analysts and dare them to pick up the pieces in an orthodox manner and to come back and challenge me and see somehow if we could create a synthesis of two diverging paths. My shaman tendency versus rigorous analytics, and where they overlap, we could potentially have where the overlap was important, because if it did happen, that overlap would be very, very significant in the size and positioning. I put out a piece yesterday, I believe. I had a pairs trade on. I was long AMD Applied Materials. This is back in 2006, and I was short Intel, and it was simply because I was looking. Again, I look at charts with conjecture, and this price relative chart, one divided by the other, came up, and for the preceding 20 years, Intel, the price at the beginning of this year that we're discussing, the beginning of January 2006, the price was 150 times greater than the start. I mean, like, when you get tech right, you just make so much money, 150 times. And then its closest competitor, Applied Materials, over the very same period, and I have no idea, but the tech people say, and with superior products, a bit like VHS, Betamax, who cares? AMD price went flat, almost flat over the same period. And I saw the pattern that I'd seen with gold divided by the S&P, kind of over the same time period. And I could see inroads into how I could, I took a risk position. I took too much of a risk position because we noted in the January letter that I made 3 percentage points of NAV, which is to say I don't believe we could have made that. I'm horrified that we could have made that, and we'll come back to risk positionings later, because that would suggest a preposterously large risk position, and for sure I would not have achieved that overlap where the analytics would have come in and said, yeah, we own this space, we understand it, we should be big. But we made the 3. I closed it because, I do have a survival gene. And I thought to myself, I know nothing about this. And thank God, because over the next 10 years, it went the same way. Intel kept going up and AMD went like that. And so the pair lost the best part of another 90%.
But maybe you just give him a kiss of life, like.
I have no idea what you're saying, but yes, a message in a bottle, dump it in the sea, and we'll see if it arrives in St Barts. I think.
Now, as we said, obviously, we're looking back at Hugh's monthlies. Now, 2006. So he put a quote in one of his monthlies by J.R. Ewing of Dallas fame, and he says, "Bobby, the price of oil is never coming down." And again, oil is, as we can see in the parlance of hedge fund managers, going to the moon. I believe is what we say. So, I mean, you were seeing all these things, and I think we talk about 2006 almost replicating now in some ways. And I think both of us felt as though you were doing that. You're on a few things about oil, about gas, about pollution. 2006 seems to resemble a lot of what's happening right now in 2022.
Those letters capture, like tombstones, teen spirit. They capture Teen Spirit, Kurt Cobain. I just learned. So, another question. Teen Spirit, where did that come from? Why Teen Spirit? Nirvana, Kurt Cobain.
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know. That's
Come on, you interviewed like rock star. Oh my god!
I can tell you the band that inspired Nirvana that come from our city.
Oh,
but
yeah, they covered one of their songs, and it's not a band, just a guy. I mean, so our American audience will know this, but to those overseas, we're largely oblivious because the brand has not carried its way this far. It is a brand of deodorant.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
it was either Kurt's former girlfriend or one of the members of the band. And, they've been kind of being a bit intimate. So he had a lot of Teen Spirit. He had her deodorant all over him. Anyway, so Teen Spirit. The letters in 2006, I mean, choose any year, 2006 would have captured the childlike wonders of curiosity. I was charged with hard fascination. Why is the sky blue? I ask questions all the time. Yeah, so carbon, permits, Europe's scheme, market prices being rational, an acceptance that we will have to continue to permit CO2 to be emitted into the atmosphere. So, like you say, Roger Hallam and who seems to be the campaign, the coordinator, the strategist.
Should we get him on here, Hugh? Should we get?
It's not worth it. You'll never.
But should we challenge your ideas? Isn't that what you tell us? You would take your ideas to your team at Eclectica, or you'd go to hedge fund conferences and you debate your ideas. Isn't it good to have a debate and just check the structure of your idea and your argument, even if you disagree with the person?
Always. How I like to engage with that is by putting it out to my team. This is my new Eclectica team. I'm putting it out to everyone to accept or reject it. And we get a good mailbag, digital mailbag, where people push back or embrace
or make fun of us.
Yeah, indeed. And I find that more productive rather than just listening to it'd be like the first computer games where it was tennis and it would be like two moving blocks and the ball would boom like that, boom comes, boring.
But now the new campaign from the same group of people with Roger Hallam as the kind of overseer is just stop the oil. Just stop oil, sorry.
Yeah. And that's, so that is where I find myself in deep conflict. I find it impossible to believe that there is any intelligent logic underlying that. It's funny, I was on one path of response and then you threw me a curveball and it was so curved that I've forgotten the first path. The first path was that the price of oil today, I don't think has any or very little bearing from the COVID crisis. A little bit, but not meaningful. I think predominantly what we're seeing in the price movement in oil is a function of people like me running the numbers. We're going to run out. It's becoming more and more scarce, and that's scarcity means it gets priced higher. The inflationary consequences. So there's a thing about oil. So again, oil being this potato for all you potato heads, and when the price of oil rises, it's a good indicator of an oncoming economic storm, of an oncoming economic recession. So oil had been in the doldrums for I want to say the best part of 15 years, up until about 2004, and took off to the upside. Broke some key previous high levels which it never traded beyond, and which was run about $40 per barrel, and And within 3 years, it had almost quadrupled. In the summer of 2008, oil was touching on $150 per barrel. Okay. So that's summer of 2008. And the oil market had yet to work out actually what was going on, which was the death of a global monetary system that we call Eurodollar, which had replaced the Bretton Woods, which had replaced the gold standard from the 1930s, but for another time. So why does high oil, why could that bring on recession? Again, because it occupies more and more and more of a household budget. And therefore people have to cut back on discretionary things like, buying T-shirts, visiting the cinema, eating out versus eating at home. What may be different this time? Because it's all very similar. The Fed has persuaded everyone that they're going to take interest rates from 0 to at least 2% over the course of the next 18 months, and that they might really, really accelerate that beginning next month in March. And the financial markets are going, oil's at $100. Every time you raise interest rates with all of the debt, dramatic movement in mortgage rates is a huge burden for average households to bear. Plus, the oil price is now high. So likelihood of a recession seems to be increasing, and the Fed has yet to increase rates. So it's a very peculiar set of circumstances. It could be that, again, this social religious dogma that we have to stop oil, which is creating a scarcity in the price of essential non-discretionary items for households. It may be that the government steps in and subsidizes. And so it may be that people are not going to get inflation-busting wage increases. And so far, that's what's happening. Inflation is running high. Labor markets are supposedly tight, which is the often cited rationale of the American central bank for why it is proposing to raise rates urgently. But there is no indication that that tightness of labor is succeeding in negotiating a better bargain for its efforts. In fact, it's the opposite. Real wages are not an issue. However, as you look at Europe, and so the US is somewhat sheltered from this, but in Europe, the energy which heats households over 50%, well over 50% of that power generation comes from natural gas. And Europe doesn't have natural gas. Natural gas is plentiful, but it is in Russia. And that's a problem. And there are geopolitical high stake games being played with Russia, Ukraine, Russia, US, etc. And because of that, natural gas in Europe today is trading at $130. The same natural gas which trades in the US for US households and for US industrials is less than $5. So Europe is really, really under the cosh, and governments are stepping in and they're saying it won't last. And future markets for natural gas are saying the price will be back. It'll be back kind of at $25, $50. So not $125. The market sees gas becoming more plentiful and the gas price falling. And so governments are saying, we will step into the breach and we will subsidize your household electricity bill. That actually that could become what we call helicopter money. This funny money, quantitative easing, has not generated inflation because it's not money printing. But if governments are willing to just run bigger and bigger deficits to take the sting out of energy prices and kind of mistakenly believing that that's only going to be a 2-year process. And if it turns out to be a permanently higher and higher and higher price escalation in these non-discretionary items, then that actually could be the foundation stones for explaining how inflation or accelerating inflation re-enters the financial system. This is kind of, again, these are big moving parts. For 40 years, the tide has been going out. It's likely that the tide will come in. We're uncertain, but it feels like, if you're getting a meteorological report about, surfing activity, it's kind of saying, things are changing. So.
But can I ask you a question? Why, if American gas is a lot cheaper than the European gas, why are we not looking at? Well, is a pipeline out of the question, or why are we not looking at taking more from the American market? Because surely they're politically more stable, as is Europe. I know Russia's things are a bit different there. So wouldn't we be better just getting the American gas? Wouldn't that benefit American economy because we're paying them for it, and we'd have a more stable, plentiful supply in Britain and in Europe, and it's cheaper as well?
Nord Stream 2, this new pipeline.
It's a massive. For people who are not aware, I'm not an expert in gas, but I looked at the size of the project. It's absolutely massive. It's a massive piece of infrastructure. The pipeline, all the things they're doing. It's huge. It's gigantic.
The pipeline itself, and there's again the additional. The pipeline is just is from points A to B, Russia to Europe. And then there has to be another infrastructure to move it around the continent of Europe. But just the A to B nodes, that's 1,200 kilometers under the sea, and it's a cost of $9.8 billion. And so I did the maths, and the shortest crossing between the US and Europe is Newfoundland to Ireland, and that is 3x that.
Well, Newfoundland's technically in Canada, but I know what you're saying. North America. Yeah.
The North American continent. So, okay, is it 3 times the cost? Let's say it's 5 times the cost. It's $50 billion. And I then thought, well, actually, hold on a second, because Russia's great kind of thing is, we're really, we feel we're being oppressed by the proximity of NATO on our borders, or proximity to our borders. But as the more that Russia stirs up this hornet's nest, the more that NATO members are coming out and saying, we have to respond here by we've got to spend more. The Russians have to be shown that we take this threat seriously. And so I then said to myself, well, how much? Because Trump was at this. Trump was saying, you don't spend enough. What is enough? It would seem from Vladimir's antics that he doesn't fear the consequences, so he clearly doesn't think they've spent enough. Anyway, they spend about, I want to say they spend about 1.2 trillion. And of course, the lion's share of that, I think 800 billion of that is the US. Okay. But so they're for sure they're going to increase it. They've all said, hey, look, we're going to step up our defense spending. They're going to increase it by what, 5%? I think 5's running at less than inflation just now. I think it's going to be 2x that. Okay, that's 100 billion. And it's like, well, hey, look, collectively, if you're going to spend 100 billion and you're going to spend it on dumbass
posturing
stuff like
posturing, it's all kind of military,
tanks.
Yeah.
It's just stuff that it's a dead weight. There's no utility. I mean, there's a utility from not having these stupid Vlad encounters which get in the way of commerce. Europe again is paying a preposterous price for gas because of stupid Vlad. So yes, there is a utility from that defense spending if it were to prevent these episodes. But surely, like the knockout blow, let's be lovers. Let's not go to war. Let's build a pipeline from another source of plentiful gas and it has a democracy that we're more accustomed to, where we're more willing to enter into long-term contracts. Let's ship the gas in from the US, and at a stroke, you absolutely you take Vlad out. You take him out, and he can't persist. His dictatorship would come to an end. He would be irrelevant. And actually, so the one thing that, when I thought about it, the one thing that's really, Europe is prosperous, but it's a bit kind of, Rolling Stones weren't writing songs about, they were writing songs about being in LA and honky-tonk women. They weren't writing songs about, the Autobahn, as good as it may be. What is that missing ingredient with Europe? And it's actually, Europe lacks energy resource. It doesn't have energy. The US has huge energy, and it has liberty, and it has super smart people. Europe has super smart people. It has liberty. It has no energy. And that's the missing ingredient. Why is that not on the table?
And when we're on gas, I wanted to ask you about the 2006 letter. So your May 2006 letter, you talk about gas, and we were talking last week about the Hunt brothers, how they sort of got themselves into a bit of difficulties, and things sort of blew up in their face. And there's a famous hedge fund disaster, catastrophe, meltdown, the Amaranth one, where I'll maybe paraphrase it, and then you can fill us in. But basically, they were a hedge fund. They went big on gas. It went wrong, and they lost $6 billion or something like that, and one of the biggest losses of all time at that point. They blew up, they disappeared. But when we looked back at your monthlies and your sort of statements from that time, you were involved in gas at that time, but not quite as deep as them. But you maybe could have been if you wanted to be.
I had forgotten about this. So Amaranth.
Did you know them? Have you come across them? Did you know them personally? No.
Previous editions, I've shared the observation of the very, very wise man who seeded George Soros. He was making the observation about life cycles, wisdom. And he was saying that, so really, ideally, a hedge fund manager should begin his career at least at the age of 40. And a long way of saying that the Amaranth guy confirmed that suspicion. He was 30. So by this point, I was 36. He was 32. He was 32, and he was riding almost 10 yards. I was 36, and I was responsible for like 300 million. He was managing 10 billion. And as you say, at the end, in September, he's like sending an email. Like yesterday we lost $5 billion. Oops. And of course, in having to reveal that, blood in the water, sharks, he lost another $500 million the following day, as and his banks. So was it last week you were talking about all-time greats? We talked about Ray Dalio.
Yeah, numerically all-time greats. Yeah. The best performers.
Not far away on that list was Ken Griffiths.
Yeah.
Of Citadel.
I think he was number 2, actually.
Yeah, and and he's younger, and he's got a lot of staying power. He's not it. He's many things, and I am the locust looking up at the farmer when I say this, but he's not a hedge fund. He is the system. Right? The hedge funds that dominate proceedings today, they're not pirates. They're not guys trying to see the future. They're not romantics. They're machines, money-making machines, and that works by becoming part of the mainframe. They are the system. So, as an example, the guy's dead. Yeah, he's put the flare up, right? But
This is Amaranth. Amaranth.
Amaranth. Right. He ain't coming back. Like, we can't rescue him. He's dead man walking. Dead man walking. You know, the clients are going to pull everything, but he's got this massive long position, and he's got to realize it. He's got to sell it because all the clients want the money back. So he has contracts, and he has the certainty that all of the clients want their money. And every day the value of the contracts is falling, and every day more and more clients want money. And so he has to sell. So Ken's group, they took a huge slug of his risk position, and they purchased it for $2 billion less than it was marked at. So they had to give a $2 billion discount on that. Now remember, this is something that had been marked at 9.6. He then come out and said, oh, actually it's more like 4. He lost another $500 million the following day. And then Ken took a $2 billion haircut. So something which 3 weeks ago was at 10, Ken was buying at 1.5. It's the system. That's the returns you get. Well done. Well done, boys at Citadel. Well done. I mean, that's market. But Amaranth was trading calendar spreads. And so my claim to fame is I've pretty much done everything. I've touched everything in finance. You name it, I've been there. I've soiled the carpet. But I'd forgotten natural gas. And yeah, sure enough, I was there in natural gas, playing calendar spreads.
Can you tell us a bit about calendar spreads? Maybe if anyone doesn't know, can you maybe sum that up quickly for us? What is the calendar spread as opposed to other things?
So here's a fantastic story from 1994 to 2006. Okay. So the 12 years preceding the year that we're discussing laboriously. Okay. 1994 to 2006. The natural gas price in the US climbed from $1 or $2 to $6. Okay, which is huge. It's a huge bull market. How much did you make if you were a pension fund and you were long the front month contracts?
Are you asking me to answer this question?
I'm asking you with no expectation that you know the answer.
See, you're the hedge fund manager. I have to ask you. Here.
But even being a hedge fund manager, when I read this stuff, I'm like, wow, really? That's amazing. It's so cool. So the answer is you would have lost 80% of your money.
How the hell does that work? I don't get that. How the hell does that work? If it's going up, are you not making more money?
It is called, get ready. I hate this stuff. It is called, I'm probably going to get it wrong, it is called contango. I'm not talking about Argentine dancing. I'm talking about contango.
Contango.
Up until 2004 or thereabouts. Until that point, the forward month of natural gas traded contango, which is to say the forward traded at a premium to the spot price.
Well, I wanted to ask you about you. So you had money, you were in gas, but you didn't quite go down the same route as our aforementioned colleagues who ended up imploding and blowing up Amaranth.
Yeah, well, two things to that. So, would you believe I was a little bit wiser? Because 4 years previously, I was the 32-year-old kid with the keys to the red Ferrari with the glass hood on the engine at the.
Exactly.
But so I can't. So the problem with the 32-year-old Amaranth kid in Canada was risk sizing was well off. You know, he was too big. Clearly, he was too big. He had misconstrued. He had shown ignorance about risk, and he had not assembled a team of wise guardians who could intervene and prevent the debacle, which resulted in the loss of $7 odd billion dollars. I can't shame him because, but for the grace of God, I was guilty of similar cavalier risk taking in that first calendar year, 2003. It wasn't natural gas then, it was gold. But my position sizes, and I think I've been very transparent, my position sizes were preposterously high. And so, so Amaranth, in the summer months, they were recording monthly gains or losses of about 12-13% of NAV. That was de rigueur for me in March, April, May of 2002.
Yeah, but you were right. So you were right, weren't you?
Regardless, regardless, being right wasn't a random variable, but in terms of it was an uncontrollable variable, and in terms of the controllable variables, I was as much guilty as the Amaranth kid for playing with a Death Star. But I had a kind of similar calendar spread because that forward futures curve had changed, and the contango.
This is in 2006. Sorry, this is 2006. Yeah. You had a similar position to them, but not as great.
Not as great. So like I said, I was a little bit wiser, and gold lit me up. Gas, like I'm revealing now. There's so much of gas that I have failed to understand. But 5-year forward gas was trading at a big discount to the prevailing front months. And so they're actually owning the front month and rolling it, regardless almost of what the natural gas price subsequently did. You would make money. And so I was in a world where I could see oil going to like $150, and gas in the US on a per barrel basis was trading at like $15, and it was trading at like $12 5 years out. I was like, this is just wrong. So that's why I had a calendar spread. I didn't have it in their size.
But that's something that hedge funds seem to have, because again, I know I'm doing a lot of foreshadowing between 2006 and this year, but hedge funds, have anything moved on? Let's talked about gas, oil, and now we're talking about hedge funds. We seem to be stuck in the quicksand.
Well, but it's back to the point I was trying to make. They're part of the fabric. They're not going away. They're not going away. Citadel is arguably more valuable than Credit Suisse. Yeah. Or will be. They're part of the fabric. It's a bit like the Wolf of Wall Street. Jason Belfort was 10x pumped up, entertaining, but 10x everything. 10x good, bad, reckless, responsible, 10x everything, right? Inherently, however, what he was doing was no different to the beginnings of all the major US Wall Street investment banks. They all started, that was their origins. They all pick up the phone every day and they purport to share wisdom, give you the edge to, people I'm having lunch to buy what? I've never heard of it. It's a technology company. They've got a cure for cancer. You're telling me I'm going to make how much? Hold on a second. Mary, I've got a guy here. How much money have we got in the bank? Yeah, no, let me wire that. Let me wire. I've got $200. Is that enough? And the guy's hung up. So Jason Belfort, the stigma that he was 10x. And so, worthy of what came his way, but don't tell me they're any different. But they've supplanted everyone else. They have become the system.
And when one of these investment banks was lucky enough, maybe unfortunate enough to procure the Hugh Hendry mobile phone number, what was your response?
I don't think it bears repeating.
I really do think it's just when we look back at that year, it stuck out to me, and then I think some parts stuck out at you as well.
But let's talk about today. I am conceiving of what I think are notable new macro trades. I'm not sitting with a Bloomberg terminal. I'm not engaged. but I'm drawing something down from the ether. And I want to be long the Brazilian real, which is to say the local currency of Brazil. Any thoughts, Chris?
Yeah. But Bolsonaro, he seems to be very unstable. So I would have thought investing in something that he had a control, a part in would be a no-no if I'm being honest.
Never met him. Reluctant to judge him. Willing to call him out what he's kind of either said or been implemented in malfeasance or silly bugger stuff. But subject to election in September, October of this year, and the former President Lulu.
He's out of jail, isn't he? Is he not out of jail? He's ready to go?
Yeah, so convicted for crimes and misdemeanors in high office, being forgiven. That's what we do in the sunshine state of Brazil, and now back, ready to take on the mantle of leader again. Regardless, anyway. Why Brazil? Okay, here's my pitch. I'm going to present to you the charts. I'm going to. So what I'm showing you now, I'm showing you a kind of smoothed long-term function of the performance of being long. Let's say $100 million, we can only dream, $100 million of your personal money, and we've got it in the bank, and we've asked the bank if they would hold it in the Brazilian currency, the real. And all of our costs, if you will, are dollar-based costs. Or if I'm a hedge fund, I've got a pair trade. I am long the real, and my financing currency is the dollar. So I'm selling the dollar to buy the real. Okay? The chart that you're looking at doesn't rhyme with what you're expecting, because what have we just discussed? We discussed Bolsonaro, controversy. We've discussed a former predecessor, Lulu, actually being convicted. This is a state which squandered the last great commodity super cycle from 2004 to 2008. What did they do with the money? They hosted the World Cup. They built stupid stadiums like South Africa, another commodity nation, did the same thing. Why don't they get it? They built empty concrete theatres of absurdity.
Did it also host the Olympics, or am I getting that wrong? No? Was the Olympics in Brazil, or have I got that wrong? Probably.
And it kind of feels, in our kind of sober conservative world, a bit of a banana republic, which is a bit that I think shows naivety, actually. And yet, when I'm showing, so what's the missing ingredient here? The missing ingredient is we come to the table with prejudice. We're like, I'm not buying that. I'm not getting involved in Brazil. And so I think we previously discussed kind of out of the way places now. We discussed that in the context of Iceland, where Iceland's like, hey, look, we fish for cod. And we've got some thermal power, but really it smells as if like someone farted in the bathroom, but it's cheap energy. And that's a great thing. But who in their right mind is going to park $1 billion in the Icelandic currency? The reason that people do is that they give you a big bribe, or bribe's an unfortunate term. They give you a big incentive. They pay you a lot of money to do so, which is, say, the interest rate, the carry from holding your currency there is meant to be compensating and rewarding for the reputational risk you're taking. And of course, but even then, they still find means to mess it up, and Iceland certainly messed it up. And it's preposterous to compare Brazil to Iceland, and I don't wish to. I'm just saying that, but Brazil does have to offer a financial inducement to encourage foreigners to hold their currency. And that's done in the sense that short-term interest rates are typically very, very high. And so to give you an example, rates today in the US and the UK are 0. They are 10.5% in Brazil. And over the last 10, 15 years, they've probably averaged, I want to say, 7 or 8%. And so when you bring in the missing ingredient of income, of that income, of that positive carry each year, it can change things significantly. So yes, you're losing. This is a bit like, it's the inverse of the natural gas. I said to you, natural gas price went up from $1 to $6 over the course of 12 years, but you were playing in a futures market in contango, which was to say it had negative carry, and so you ended up losing 80% of your money. Okay, the real is the inverse of that. The positive carry to own it, if you will, is in backwardation. But yes, there's been kind of news bombs and kind of silly practices, and so the dollar has been the stronger of the pair, but the carry trade has compensated. So I'm showing you the Brazilian real against the dollar, against the yen, and against the euro. So all zero funding. Borrow money there, the liability is costing you zero, and then you're receiving an uplift immediately of almost 11%. And I'm saying to you that I want to go long the real today because, first of all, back to what I call the carbon insanity, the loony environmentalists, the social curse, which is forbidding the exploration of new carbon emitting gas and oil discoveries, plus everything with regard to the scarcity in copper and all the other metal complexes. Which is to say, I think Brazil, which is plentiful in these things, when their price is high, that is a very positive dynamic for the economy. But again, because of how I kind of laboured, European governments and global governments, I think, are going to have to deal with permanently higher and higher energy prices by subsidizing them. And so I fear that inflation is out, the inflation genie is out of the bottle. And whilst I don't think 10-year treasuries are going to, yields are going to take off to very high levels just yet, I think we're at the end of a 40-year cycle for low interest rates in the US. We'll see. But I want to say that I think Brazilian interest rates are going to remain high, and I think commodity prices are going to remain high, and that double coming together makes the Brazilian real very, very sexy. This is the essence of macro. This is what you expect to see in a global macro fund, and this feels like a turning point. This feels like we're at a saucer bottom formation, and you never get to hear about this, and I'm telling you about this in the midst of the turning point. So we spent a lot of time in 2006. We finished 2006. 2006, I think, as you revealed in your observations as you looked at it, is not to be dismissed. Arguably, it's a year of striking import and relevance to where we find ourselves today. But now it's time to end. And when we bring this thing to a wrap, Chris, what do we do?
I know we're going to talk about Brazil, and just to prove how weird, how the weird way this podcast and synergy works, I am wearing a T-shirt of the current Brazilian hero to the masses. I am. It's Neymar Jr., the current darling of a Brazilian football.
I mean, you can't script this stuff.
You cannot script it. You cannot script that. But we will end with the Wheel of Fortune. Some people don't like it, but some people do. We're not sure if we're keeping it. Anyway, Hugh, number between 1 and 59, please.
29.
Number 29. Do you have a hedge fund story involving a job interview?
Yes, let's keep it snappy. I mean, I ran a hedge fund for 15 years. I must have employed cumulatively anywhere from 100 to 150 kids. I was closely engaged in the hiring of those closest to me on the investment team. I could go many ways. I was persuaded that I had made an error. What was the error that I made? I was looking for the Dirty Dozen. That's a very old movie from the 1970s or something. Charles Bronson, Yul Brynner, and whatever. I want to say it's a kind of, not a mercenary group, but it's a group of kind of misfits.
Rogues.
Put on
Rogues, no?
Rogues, and they're put on a suicide mission, and obviously it's like Kelly's Heroes. I chose people in my image. I wanted the orphans and the crazy people that didn't fit in anywhere else, and someone very wise then came calling, saying, well, like, you're nothing more than a magpie. And his point being that magpies, and I think dolphins share this, that they can see and respond and engage with their image. They can their mirror image, and actually, I don't know if this is an urban myth, but they tell me that magpies furnish their nests with like
shiny objects. Yeah, they can see the reflection. Yeah.
Because they're very curious. Like,
yeah.
Who's that? That was me. I'm like, who's that? I liked having misfits, and actually, as I'm discovering in my labors, in my joyful labors in the Caribbean, there's only room for one crazy guy, and what my life really is calling out for is I need some straight agents.
That's me. I've got my hand on the tiller, Hugh. I've got my hand on the tiller. I'm keeping the show on the road.
God help me.
But on your, just very briefly, when you did an interview with people, would you even bother looking through the CV for their financial knowledge, or were you more just about their personality in your job interviews? Is that what you were saying? You wouldn't really bother about the technical skills so much. You want to see what they were like as people.
It's confusing. It's tough. It's hard. It's unpleasant choosing people and passing over people and who's got the magic formula? What's a good hire? What's not a good hire? I say I fell back on. Well, just hire yourself. It's kind of working for you. Hire people from the chip from the old block. And so what was I? What was the block? The block was passionate about the subject matter. And so you were looking for passion, people that were channeling passion. And you don't have to look very. You don't have to like go looking very far. Passion is a life force. It just the people glimmer and glow, and you just bathe in the light that they cast. Give you an anecdote. Like, so we know Tom Roderick, who went on to become one of my investment partners, and I remember hiring him. And my God, did I give him a hard time? And I was furious that he'd taken a year out. He'd worked with. He'd landed an amazing position with Brevin Howard, being put into their graduate training scheme, fantastic, and for whatever reason, he kind of lost his orbit and was spun out, and decided to take a year out. I was just full of rage at that. I was like, you get back in as quickly as possible. But I'm glad to say I forgave him. And I was willing to forgive because of his kind of Welsh farmer's robustness. He was a heavyweight that could take punishment, but he could land heavy blows back, and that's what I needed. Yeah, because I'm gonna come at you. I'm gonna be all over you, and if you're weak, I'm gonna trample you, and that ain't any good. I mean, first of all, it's a bad reflection on me. I'm a bully. But secondly, to forge the synthesis, I need robust, smart people who are going to push back and say, you're wrong.
Well, on that note, people, he's told you what to do. So listen back to this podcast, give him your robust thoughts. Social media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you want to find them. You can find you, Henry, there. Drop us your comments, push back. We have been the Confessions team. This has been episode 27. We'll see you soon.